We've all heard it. You millennials and your avocado toast. Too many lattes. That's the reason millennials can't buy houses. Well, hello, I'm 31 years old and right in the heart of millennialism, and I can promise you that is not the case. There are actually a ton of factors why millennials can't afford homes right now in the Kansas City market, but the good news is there's a lot of solutions and things we can do about it. Today, I'm gonna break down 10 reasons why Kansas City millennials aren't able to afford to buy a home and what solutions we have for them. As a real estate agent licensed on both sides of the state line, one major strategy I have is I never go to a client with a problem that I don't have a solution to present. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to acknowledge 10 real problems that millennials face and the solutions to hopefully eventually overcoming them. And at the end, I'm going to give you a few of my personal tips and tricks I use with my clients to try to get them into homes. As your fellow millennial, let's jump in. Number one, I think this is the biggest one by far because there is hard data to back this up. We have had relative stagnant wage growth against skyrocketing home prices. This is the problem. Our wages are not the same relative to our grandparents or even our parents' wages and home prices. I want to show you this post from one of my favorite Instagram accounts. This is Personal Finance Club. They talk about all things personal finance, obviously. And this shows the cost of a house. Millennials pay double the amount that baby boomers did for homes. An average home today costs 6.3 years of income compared to 3.5 years in 1985. This is a real problem, and it's something that I think we have to face with two eyes open and not blame it on the avocado toast. There is a solution though, and that is to explore all of the programs and options there are out there for you today. There are a lot of first-time homebuyer incentives, both that are provided by states and local lenders. I think it's really important that even if you think buying a home is out of reach for you, to go ahead and explore it, sit down with a lender, sit down with an agent, and see if there are programs that can help you now and or what you need to do over the next 6, 12 months, or even couple of years to set yourself up to be in a position to buy. The second major problem facing millennial homebuyers is high student loan debt. Many Kansas City millennials have a big, fast student loan bill they have to pay every single month. This goes on well into your 40s even if you don't get ahead of it. This impacts your home buying process because it kills your debt to income ratio, which is one of the major factors they use to qualify you for a mortgage. The solution here is look into refinance options for your student loans that exist out there. And if you feel saddled by student loans, you can still explore what home buying would look like for you and what dollar amount you need to pay them down to make it realistic and sustainable for you. The action item here is to talk to a financial professional that can help you out with this. I'd be happy to connect you with some people I know. Just slide into the old DMs. The third problem facing potential millennial home buyers that's causing our inability to buy houses is rising interest rates. Remember the graphic I showed you just a couple of minutes ago showing home purchases in 1985? Well, what you'll hear from a lot of our parents and grandparents is, well, my first house had a 13% interest rate. Well, yes, that's true, but how much did that house cost? Because yes, though our interest rates are not nearly a record-setting number, they are high, especially considering the amount of house we are financing on this interest rate. The good news is there are several solutions to this. Number one, they are starting to decline. Slowly but surely, we're seeing a steady tick down in interest rates. And I suspect that once they get to a certain threshold, this market's just gonna blow up and it's gonna be crazy land again. So if you want to get ahead of that and buy sooner rather than later, you can buy points at closing to buy down your interest rate, or even better than that, my favorite program right now is a seller paid interest rate buy down that can save you. It's actually saved actual clients of mine like $600 or more a month in their first year of payments. There are some people out there that are using adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs, but exercise a lot of caution with that and make sure you fully understand what you're doing and have a lender that you really trust. There's a lot of things we can do about interest rates, and I would love to chat strategy with you over a cup of coffee. Just hit me up and we'll set up a time. The fourth reason that millennial home buyers in Kansas City cannot afford to buy houses is limited inventory. And this is definitely true in our market. We have seen record lows of inventory over the last 5 or so years. Even with the increase in interest rates and the kind of slowdown to the market, our inventory really hasn't improved much. There's still just not that many houses out there for millennials to choose from. I think a big factor that people aren't considering is that because of the interest rates, less people are selling. A lot of people are in a house longer than they ever intended to plan to be because it's the most financially responsible thing to do. Solutions here. Be creative, be open-minded, be patient. It may take some time for you to sit back and watch the market and wait for the right thing to come along. You also may want to consider different areas than what you think would be your ideal situation and houses that have some projects that need to be taken care of. This is where it's especially important to be working with an agent that understands your must-haves, your needs that you would rather rent forever than compromise on, and then things that we can find some compromise and some middle ground to help get you into a house if that is your goal. Number 5, the 5th reason why Kansas City millennials are not able to afford to buy homes is something that drives me insane. My pet peeve, institutional investors. We have major corporations from New York, from California, in some cases from outside of the country, buying up houses in mass in Kansas City. And I think in a lot of more moderately priced Midwest markets, this is true there as well. Though I will say anecdotally, I think this has slowed down over the last couple of years. It is certainly still happening. And the big rush when they bought so many in 2020, 2021, and into 2022, they're still sitting on those. And those are houses that could be coming on the market and being a part of the natural cycle of inventory. This is probably the problem that I have the weakest solution for, because there's nothing that you and I can do personally. But I would say if you really get involved in local legislation and policies and advocate for policies that limit the number of single family homes that an investor can own, can purchase. There's a lot of people out there for proponents of higher taxation on certain investors if they meet certain criteria. So it's really important to get involved and try to understand what's on the table, what makes the most sense, and really advocate for things that can limit this moving forward. Number 6, the 6th reason why millennials cannot purchase homes in Kansas City is high rental costs. And I know that seems silly, because why would high rent prevent you from purchasing a home? Doesn't not mean you'd be more likely to purchase a home, but the truth is it impacts your ability to save. As the market has increased, so has rent. Landlords have increased rent with the housing market. They kind of go hand in hand. I do want to take a moment to say, though, sometimes renting makes the most sense, and there is no shame in renting. That is an important step on your journey to homeownership. Popping back over to Instagram to look at this file that I love. Again, it's Personal Finance Club. This is a graph that they put up showing the cost of owning a home, because I think a lot of people say, oh, when you own a home, you're building equity, which is true. But there are other costs associated with owning a home that I think people don't take into account. So what I do with my clients is I want you to go in fully aware of all of the costs, weigh out pros and cons. And for some of my clients that I meet with, they're like, it makes more sense for me to rent another couple of years. And I support that 100%. So I just take this moment to say, no shame in renting. And in fact, it may be the most responsible thing for you to do financially for the time being, despite high rent prices. Solution here is to scale back what your ideal rental looks like. If you can rent something that's older and more run down or in a less ideal neighborhood to save up money faster and get into a house you want, that may be the way to go. Also, just an unsolicited word of advice. If you are renting a super high-end luxury apartment and you're, say, paying $2,000 a month, and then you move into a house that you bought and you try to keep your payment the same, your quality of life or like the finishes in the home you live in are probably going to go down a lot. So if you do want to become a homeowner, maybe it's not the time to be renting the nicest thing out there, because then it's going to be disappointing when you own your own house and it doesn't have like the beautiful waterfall countertop and things like that. Number 7, the 7th reason that Kansas City millennials are struggling to have access to homeownership is a lack of affordable housing development. A lot of developers in Kansas City and builders and across the country have moved into the luxury market and are focusing on higher priced products because the margins are better for them. They're making more money. This is not all their fault. These are not all greedy developers and builders. The cost of materials has gone up. The cost of contractors has gone up. Everything is more expensive. So it's harder for them to build lower priced products. However, there are builders out there doing it. And I know that many of my colleagues appreciate the builders that are out there trying to build something quality for an affordable price. This does have a trickle down effect though. It's not even about them building a first time home buyer price. It's about them building the middle tier price. If we're only building luxury, we're missing that stepping stone from your first house into your second house that people were taking 5 or 10 years ago. Solution here is, again, policy, encouraging local legislatures to put things into place like tax abatement in certain areas to get builders to build things that are more financially approachable. There's even zoning laws that can be looked at where how can we help cut builders' costs to keep them building things that are more affordable so they can still make money and we can still have housing for people that need it. The 8th reason that Kansas City millennials are struggling to afford houses in the Kansas City metro is gentrification and displacement. And this is true in many, many cities across the country, and it has been for quite some time. But what this looks like is when developers, investors, people that have equity and have cash to play with go buy up properties in lower income areas and areas where the prices are lower, then they flip them, they tear them down, they rebuild, and then all of a sudden the prices in that area that used to be affordable are skyrocketing. We are seeing this in many pockets of Kansas City. The solution here, you guessed it, we're back to policy again. I know we don't want to get involved in politics, but man, it impacts so much of what we do all day, every day. Get involved in your local politics. This isn't about who's the president. This is on the local scale. What codes do we have? What zoning do we have? What regulations do we have to protect homeowners, to protect our cost of living, and to protect the cost of houses? The 9th reason that Kansas City millennials struggle to afford housing is credit challenges. A lot of millennials have leaned on credit cards and built up a heavy chunk of credit card debt just trying to get by with all of the crazy changes we've seen in our economy. It's such a vicious cycle. You get one credit card that you have a ton of debt on, and then you can hardly meet the minimum payments. The interest rates are so crazy, it just keeps ballooning out of control. This impacts, again, your debt to income ratio and qualifying for a house. And in most cases, credit cards are a lot more harmful than something like a student loan or a car payment because of those massive interest rates. The solution here, there's a lot of credit repair programs out there. There's credit consolidation programs, but make sure they're reputable companies that you have gotten recommended to you by a financial advisor that you trust. And there's lots of options to avoid new credit inquiries that can hurt your credit score without you even realizing it. So my biggest piece of advice on this is to chat with a mortgage lender. If your ultimate goal is to buy a home, they can look at your credit score, they can look at your debt and give you an action plan over the next 6, 12 months, even couple of years to set you up for success in the future. The 10th reason that Kansas City millennials can't afford to buy a home is economic uncertainty. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like uncertainty is just the name of the game for our lifetime. From 9/11 on, it feels like it's just been one world crisis after another, which has led to the economy kind of going up and down. This hurts the job market. A lot of millennials, especially the older end of millennials, were in the job market already out of college right when the recession hit. And then you start your career off on that foot, and it just makes it really hard to recover. There's also the psychological side of this, that if you've seen all this upheaval and you've gotten laid off and seen the economy go up and down, you may be nervous to commit to a mortgage even if you want to. Solutions here are to focus on staying within your means, buying a house you're for sure comfortable affording, not being ashamed of renting longer if you're not in a position to buy. And a couple of other tips and tricks I use with my home buyers is look for those first-time home buyer programs and incentives that exist out there. They are there for a reason, but you do have to go out and look for them. And usually the best way to do that is through a local mortgage broker. Also, another trick that I like to use is there's a program called a USDA loan that mostly applies to the outskirts of the metro. So you do have to be willing to kind of move away from the hustle and bustle for a hot minute, but you can buy a house with no down payment. But I just mentioned this as an option for if you don't want to compromise on other things and you can compromise on location for a few years, you can move out to the outskirts, put no money down, build equity, and then be ready to move into your ideal neighborhood in just a few years. I love talking strategy with my clients. I love grabbing a cup of coffee or hopping on Zoom and dreaming about the future. I just did this last week with a peer of mine. She was my age and she's looking to buy her first house. So we were able to talk about how hard it is to buy a house at this age and what she needs to do to set herself up 18 months from now even. So love doing that. Please reach out. I cannot wait to hear from you. In the meantime, I'll be here on YouTube giving you the scoop on all things Kansas City. See you next time.